Here we are, day 3 of the NFL draft. We're not technically not even halfway through the draft, if you look at it that way.
By number?
Yeah.
Correct.
But we're starting to see the light to the end. And today's the day where players we've never heard of get drafted.
And fans continue to be upset.
Welcome in. We thought we'd do a live Hoge Jahns episode for you to start Saturday morning. We were going to get on here and recap last night anyway. And so why not do it live? And we'll take some of your feedback and comments and things like that. But it's been a busy couple days. Johns, we were live for 4.5 hours last night.
Olin Kreutz walked off your set.
Yes. Now, there's a little bit more context to that than the social media clip that was going around. I think the most important context is that, one, he was kind of doing a bit because he really wanted an offensive lineman, obviously, because he's Olin Kreutz. And so the fact that they went DB, you know, he was kind of screwing around. More importantly, he had just taken a shot at Malort. And
Why did you?
Hey, don't look at me. I'm the one who refused to do it.
Because you're a true Chicagoan.
Yeah. Well, some
Here's
people would
my
argue.
Malort. I've been born and raised in this city. Still live in this city. The city limits. This Malort thing is just like a tourist trap. That's my firm belief. It is not part of our culture. If you live in this actual city, it's not.
Yes. Well, and there's a whole long story that goes, but apparently the guys at DNVR had some game where if they got the pick right, everybody had to do a shot. And technically, Nicholas Moriano tweeted out on Thursday, I think, or Wednesday, that Kyler Gordon was his guy. So the Bears drafted Kyler Gordon. So the DNVR guys were like, you guys all have to do a shot. And they're like, do Malort. And I'm like, no, I refuse to do that. Will not do that. And so instead I did tequila. So while Will and Olin, Will and Olin were struggling through the Kyler Gordon analysis as the next pick approach with Jaquan Brisker, they were, I was doing okay. That's the real story. And Olin, I think, used the pick to walk off and go like wash his mouth out.
Wanted to throw up.
Yeah, probably. So there's the inside story of what happened last night. There was a lot that happened last night. There was a dog that walked on the set, peed on the rug.
Why is there no clip of that?
There was a clip of the aftermath, and then we kind of turned it into a Big Lebowski bit, with the rug getting peed on. So that was more entertaining. And then the dog came back and did something else that I will not go into detail about. And then it was kind of like, okay, that's not funny anymore.
that dog must have had a shot at Malort too.
Yeah. So, hey, that's one way to experience day 2 of the draft. It was fun, but welcome in. We're going to talk about these 3 picks that the Bears made this morning, and a lot more picks coming today, although the Bears do not have a 4th-round pick, which I do think is one of the negative outcomes of what happened yesterday, is just the fact that they never were able to trade back and add a 4th-round pick at any point. But make sure you're following us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Johns. Johnsy's got all the coverage up on The Athletic, theathletic.com/Hoge Jahns. I've been glued into the beast all weekend, and today is where the beast comes in handy the most.
Yes.
As we get through rounds 4 through 7. But Johnsy, what were your initial reactions from Hallis Hall last night?
Well, I woke up this morning and I told myself, and I was going through all the text messages of your friends who just happen to enjoy texting you throughout the draft while you're working.
Yes, I get those too, and I just
so there's a bunch of them. I like the draft. I am a firm believer that they have to do more around Justin Fields, but I like that they got 2 day 1 starters. 2 day 1 starters for their secondary on day 2 of the draft. And some high-end player in those. They're not reaches. They're not. Best player available. I like Brisker. I like Gordon. Day 1 starters for the Chicago Bears. I like that. Everyone should like that.
I feel like we talk about this every year, but you get all this lead up to the draft, and then almost instantly, though, you get a vibe of how quickly the player is going to be able to contribute. Like I think back to like a pick like Eddie Jackson.
Yeah.
When they made that pick, you could just tell right away. It was like, oh, they're kind of thinking that this guy, even though he's a 5th-round pick, is going to play right away. And sure enough, he started week 1.
Same thought process, the 3 going.
when Tariq Cohen was the same way. Darnell Mooney was kind of the same way. The way they talked about him right away, it was like, so I actually even got that vibe a little bit with Velus Jones Jr. last night, which was, he's a 25-year-old rookie, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be someone that's not going to be on the field for even 50% of the snaps. But he's got a good chance to be the returner from day one and probably get worked into the offense, into some packages, and get him the ball in space the same type of way. So, like, if you look at it that way, I think the Bears got 3 players last night that you're going to see on the field week 1 in more than just a special teams role. And that shouldn't be lost on anyone. I understand the angst about Justin Fields and all that, but I don't think it's the end of the world what they did last night. I think they actually helped their football team overall.
He's a smaller version of Cordero Patterson. And I don't want to use the name Deebo Samuel, but Ryan Poles did it himself. I'm not comparing them as players. You can't do that. But you can compare the role that the Bears envision for Velus Jones Jr. Jet sweeps, quick screens, maybe a couple runs out of the backfield, different things. The occasional kick return, or maybe a little more as a rookie. But he's going to be on the field as a rookie. And can I make one more point about Velus Jones here? Just because Dane Brugler, for example, had a 5th or 6th round grade on Velus Jones Jr. does not mean the Bears reached in the 3rd round. There's different grades applied to all different teams. Look at the Patriots taking Cole Strange, the offensive lineman in the 1st round, and everybody had him pegged much, much later in the draft. I think they did it later again. Who another one? Jaquan Thornton, right?
Yes. The Patriots' 2 picks were quote-unquote reaches.
Okay, so that's another reach. Like, if you want to use that word, reach.
But does anybody in New England go, oh, these are reaches? No, they go, Bill Belichick decided they were good, so.
Exactly. Well, obviously, but, with all due respect, Bill Belichick has earned that.
Yeah.
But Bill Belichick also recently has had a bunch of bad drafts. Go look him up. Dane Brugler had a 5th round grade on Thornton. Belichick took him, 2 picks?
He took it,
the Bears?
The 50th pick
Brisker.
in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I think they traded up for him, too.
Mm-hmm. So
just something to think about. Here's another one. Alec Pierce, 89th player on Dane Brugler's big board. Went, 52nd and 53rd to the Colts?
Yep.
That a reach?
There was a little run there. Those wide receivers.
Just saying.
All right, let's do this. Let's kind of go in order with the 3 picks that were made last night. We'll talk about each one individually. But Kyler Gordon was somebody that really, I would say in the last 2 weeks, both things we read, some conversation I had, I thought he was going to go in the back half of the 1st round. Like, he was just one of those late risers a little bit. That doesn't necessarily mean he wasn't there the whole time. It just means like that's when the information started leaking out that, he could go earlier. And Logan Hall was in that same boat. Neither one actually went in the 1st round, but then Logan Hall came off the board right away with the 1st pick last night. And I believe the Bears when they say they're probably sitting there thinking he doesn't get to them at 39. And maybe in other years when they have more draft capital, he could have been a type of player that they would think about trading up for just to make sure they got him. But Ryan Poles sat there and said, no, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to let a player come to us. And Kyler Gordon was still on the board there at 39. Now, everyone's thinking, are they going to trade back? Are they going to trade back? Because, we've talked about that endlessly for the last few months. Based on what Ryan said last night, they liked Gordon so much that it would have taken quite a lot for them to actually make that move back. And so they just decided to take a player that, Johnsy, this is just sort of a gut feeling, but I think there's a very good chance he's starting week 1 opposite of Jalen Johnson.
It's Jalen Johnson all over again, but a better athlete. Jalen Johnson walked into training camp as the starter, did he not?
I'm honestly forgetting if he had to earn it because that was the COVID year.
I want to say in the offseason program, he was rotating maybe with Artie Burns.
Yeah, something like that.
But then by training camp,
Well,
it was
Burns
him.
got hurt in camp, and then it was like, well, now they
Yeah.
don't really have a choice. And sure enough, week 1 in Detroit, he's starting, and he made that clinching play at the end of that game, remember?
Right. I'm sure the Bears will have a similar thought process with Kyler Gordon. I think it was Francis St. Paul, the Bears national scout, who said, Matt Eberflus will make him earn it. But the traits are there. The special movement skills are there. The ball production is there. I like that he has no penalties in his career, or at least over the past 2 years. How crazy is that?
Both of the DBs the Bears drafted.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
No penalties the last 2 seasons. So, the second they got Kyler Gordon, I was like, okay, it's obviously not offense, but it's definitely not a bad pick.
Not at all.
Well, I'll save this to when we talk about Velus Jones again. But the age factor, Gordon, I mean, it's a good pick for the defense. They have so many needs that you really can't get mad about it. You just can't. So let's move on then to Jaquan Brisker. So he comes up at 48. Now here I do wonder if there were some more conversations about potentially trading. I couldn't help but notice that clock got down to like 1:15 before we got that notification that the pick was actually in. And at that point, a lot of these picks were starting to roll a little bit faster. And so I don't know if there was any conversations there. Maybe we'll find out later. But in the end, they take Jaquan Brisker, who I liked a lot. And I did not think was going to be available there at 48.
I'm sure there were conversations. You could use the old saying, it takes 2 to tango. You also have to look at your draft trade charts to make sure you get value for it. You can't just take some deal for an extra pick when when it doesn't make sense to your own value charts. You can't break from that. I'm sure there are offers like that, but you can't break from your own value charts. My initial reaction with Brisker is like, oh, wow, people are not going to like this. It's another defensive back. When you need an offensive lineman, and there's good ones on the board. When you need a receiver, and there's good ones on the board. But if it's the best player available on their board, the Bears board, then I'm all for it. The more you read about Brisker, there's an intangible to him, some leadership intangibles that must be considered. You're talking about a guy who's going to change your culture, a leader in every aspect, not just in the secondary, but for your entire defense, if not your entire team.
Well, I'm going to give a hat tip to Kevin Fishbane for his story with polls on the resiliency factor, right? We talked about this. He likes guys with resiliency. And on Monday's CHGO show this week, I brought up Brisker because I couldn't help but notice in Dane Brugler's draft guide, there's a sad note in there about how his brother was shot and killed when he was in high school. Grades were a problem. He didn't take school seriously. He goes the JUCO route, and eventually, we talk about this every year with draft, then something clicks, right? That maturity factor kicks in, and for some guys, it just accelerates, especially when it comes to football. And I think, which was the scout last night that was talking about Brisker?
Chris Prescott.
Yeah. He got into that a little bit too. Just some of these, it's just the reality, unfortunately. A lot of these guys just grow up and have awful things happen to them in younger ages and sort of channel some of that into football. And then they become amazing leaders on and off the field. And that, and I think that that's the case here with Brisker, obviously just not having that chance to know him personally yet. But you look at the depth chart.
Need is met.
He's starting week 1 next to Eddie Jackson, unless he gets hurt, right? I mean, to me, there's no question about it.
To go back to the intangible point, Ryan Poles had this great quote when he's looking through his actual scouting notes, the notes from the scouts, with the written notes, typed up notes, what have you. This is what Ryan Poles said last night. I was looking through our scout stuff, and one of the guys used the term Super Bowl over accolade type to describe Brisker. You got to love that.
So in other words, what he's saying is he cares more about winning Super Bowls than winning defensive player.
He wants to win.
Yeah.
Wants to win.
And then I had that moment where I think it was Dan Weeder asked him, hey, are there any examples of him making a clutch play or whatever? And he goes, oh, yeah, right at the end of the Wisconsin game. And I go, mother. because I had totally forgotten he was the one that intercepted Graham Mertz at the goal line when the Badgers were
He
about
did.
to
I watched
win
that
the game.
highlight last night. Hell of a
Okay.
play. Hell of a read.
The shittiest throw ever, though, if we're going to be honest. Like, threw the ball right to him.
Didn't see him.
Basically, yeah. That was going to be a touchdown. He just did not. Either he didn't put enough air under it or he just didn't see him, and Brisker undercut it. And then he returned it like 40 yards, and then the ref got wiped out by Graham Mertz on the sideline just to put the cherry on top of the play.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I like Brisker a lot, though. I know it doesn't help Justin Fields at all with those first 2 picks, but I really feel strongly they got 2 plug-and-play starters on defense.
Can I? What if they kind of do help Justin Fields? Just
well,
yeah. I know what you're saying, but in terms of building a better team, to use the word like when Ryan Poles was listing the ways that he could help Justin Fields. This was this pre-draft press conference where he mentioned, I know everyone's saying we just got to go receiver, but we got to build on the offensive line. Then he also mentions turnovers. It just has the one word sentence, turnovers.
Yeah.
You have 2 who could produce it now. Then he mentioned special teams about flipping the field. They did that in the 3rd round with the versatile threat in Velus Jones. I know what you're saying, and I think the Bears have to do more. I'm not changing my opinion on that in terms of adding around Justin Fields, but I like the picks. In general, if you feel like you added 2 day 1 starters instead of projects on day 2 of the draft, you should feel good about that. Well, this isn't an Adam Shaheen situation for the Bears this year.
Okay, which is a great thing about transitioning to Velus Jones Jr. here, okay? Because you can be upset that he's a 25-year-old rookie. And we've had some comments in here already today in our live show this morning about you got to think big picture. Why are you drafting a 25-year-old rookie? Well, the flip side to that is you draft a 20-year-old rookie, and you're almost surely not getting a guy who's playing right away. And sometimes they never play. Sometimes 3 years goes by and you're like, why is Riley Ridley never on the field? Right? Or the only time we see Javon Williams is when he's dropping a ball in the end zone. There's something
or punching somebody.
You know what I mean? Like these developmental, and in that case, Wims was a 7th round pick. But if a guy's 25, it's not ideal. But as Poles said in his press conference last night, it's just one piece of the puzzle. There's every scouting report, there's a lot on there. Okay. And you're very rarely in the 3rd round going to get the perfect prospect. You're not even going to get the perfect prospect in the 2nd round. Okay. Those guys go in the top 10. And even then, half of the top 10 is going to bust out too, by the way. So if you can get a guy who's seasoned, who you pretty much know you can put him back there, he's going to field a kick to start week 1 and take it. But like if in week 1, Velus Jones Jr. averages 25 kick return yards on a couple kickoffs, get you over 10, like 12, 13 on a couple punt returns, and catches 2 balls that each get you first downs because they're chunk plays. That's a win for a 3rd round pick. That's all I'm trying to say here. You're not going to always draft the next Tyreek Hill, at this point in the draft. If it's a guy who can get on the field early and help you fill a need, that's still a win at number 71.
It's not Adam Shaheen.
No.
now we're into the 3rd round, but it's the point about finding players who can play now. I'm okay with the draft so far. I understand some of the angst over it, but at least the Bears have explained some of their vision for Velus Jones. Like they have a vision for him.
Yeah.
Like I think that's important from the get-go, right? Like they align on their thought process on him. Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles want explosive athletes. Luke Getsy wants a versatile threat for his offense. Boom. Here's Velus Jones Jr. for you in the 3rd round. Let's move him up our boards a little bit because he could do so much for us.
Sometimes I get confused when the comments are rolling in during these live shows because there's people complaining about Debo comps. We didn't do that. That must be happening in the comments, right?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned them, but you're not comparing them as players. You're comparing the roles that they're going to have.
Yeah.
Same with Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
Similar role, different players.
Swiss Army knife.
Yes.
Type player in the offense. That's all.
Heck, call him a bigger version of Tariq Cohen.
By the way, actually, that's kind of what his role will be. And the Bears actually here's the thing about Tariq Cohen. They miss him. When Tariq Cohen was right, there's a reason why they gave him that extension. I thought the extension was a little early, but he was well on his way to getting that second contract, right? Because he was giving you enough value as an adjuster, Swiss Army knife.
Matt Nagy word alert.
That's true. But here's what's true is when he's not on the field, he makes it easier for the defense to cover you. Having a guy like that out there helps the quarterback recognize the defense, right? Now, Mitch wasn't good enough at seeing that. Ideally, Justin Fields will when you put a guy like Velus Jones Jr. on the field.
Fast guys are good. I know what you're going to say about last year. They had a lot of fast guys, but we'll see if Velus Jones can. He seems to do more with the ball in his hands than the fast guys that the Bears added last year.
Well, I was going to say, they're good if they're actually dangerous.
Yes.
If they're actually commanding some attention when they go out there. You didn't, when Damiere Byrd walked out there last year, you weren't necessarily seeing the defense like pointing like, oh, we got to get, slide this way, slide, that wasn't happening.
This guy earned all Pac-12 honors, transferred to Tennessee, and earned all SEC honors. That is something.
Yeah.
The guy impressed in 2 major football conferences in college. That's something. One more note about his age. James Daniels is still younger than Velus Jones, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Fun fact, right? Crazy. But at 20, remember that being viewed as a positive for James Daniels, that he was a 20-year-old rookie, that he has all this time to develop. And Adam, did he develop into the player the Bears thought he'd be?
Well, he might for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's not going to be for the Bears.
He might, no.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Bears are to blame for that because they moved him around a bit. That experiment at center didn't work because he didn't have the voice for it. But that's kind of the point. I think when a player gets drafted, like everyone just assumes that guy's going to be around for 10 years. Like that's just not. It's a very small chance of that actually happening. It's great you drafted James Daniels and he was 20, but he might get here in his prime for a different team because you were still unsure after 4 years if he was really your guy or fit your offense. So yeah, it may suck when you get to the end of Velus Jones Jr.'s rookie deal and you're like, oh, he's 29, and that's probably not going to help him, maximize his contract. But let me just start with this. If you're at that point, that was a win. Like if you're even at that point where he's 29 years old and you want to give him a second contract, then it was a good pick. And you made a good pick at 71 in the third round. So let's not worry about 4 years from now at this point. Let's just see if this guy can get on the field and help the quarterback. Should be able to. You want to talk about the quarterback briefly? Because I feel like he keeps coming up in discussions on Twitter.
Well, yeah, because people are mad that. Look, and I get it. Okay, Johns, it's April 30th. Tomorrow is May. And the first thing we talked about when this new regime came in, what were all of our questions on day one? They were about Justin Fields. Justin Fields was the one player who came out and met with us, with the media, the day those guys were hired. The day those guys were introduced. This has been all about Justin Fields. And we are now on April 30th, and they have signed Lucas Patrick, Byron Pringle, Equimania St. Brown, and drafted a 25-year-old rookie, Velus Jones Jr. Like, they haven't done enough. The counterpoint is it's still April 30th. There's going to be another wave of free agency here. You have post-draft. You have comp pick windows closing. You have guys who are going to be available. And as Ryan Poles said last night, he knew he wasn't going to be able to fix everything in 1 year. Like, that was an admission.
I am glad he said that.
I am too. It's reality.
Yes, it's candidness that you don't always get from front office members, regardless of sport, right? Maybe the Cubs and Theo Epstein had that back when they had to knock everything down. But being candid about your situation, it's him saying, no, we didn't consider trading up in the first round. I need those picks. There's always the end of that. You lose picks later in the draft. Just like he said, he doesn't expect to trade up into the fourth. Why? It's going to cost picks. It's going to cost picks. He needs more picks. Whether or not he can trade back is another thing. But to hear him be candid about the Bears situation, understanding that this isn't just a one-year fix, they're not one or two players away, I appreciate that.
Well, and like we've been saying, they really had a great draft on defense last night, and that's still part of what I think people are forgetting how big the hole was at corner. Like massive. They don't have a second or third cornerback
and safety, especially in today's NFL.
So, but I promise. I'll make this promise to you all right now. Like, if this offensive depth chart still looks like this when they go into training camp, then I'll be sitting here bitching about it. Absolutely. And criticizing that. I'm just saying I respect the process that's going on right now. Okay. Get through the draft first, then reevaluate what you have. Because let's say they'd gone out and paid a cornerback a bunch of money. Well, now they drafted Kyler Gordon, like that wouldn't have made sense. You know what I mean? So now that they've gotten through the draft, they can reevaluate what those holes are, and there's still going to be people you can sign. There's good offensive linemen out there. There's Jarvis Landry still available. Like, I'm not saying the Bears are going to go sign him, but my point is there's good players that are out there that are now going to get signed, because it's not just the Bears. It's pretty much all the NFL that we're sitting here just going, let's get through the draft, then we'll see who's still out there and who we can sign.
How about this thought? What if the Bears, maybe they like Larry Borom at left tackle? Maybe they like Tevin Jenkins at right tackle. What if this new regime really likes what they got there?
Yeah, I still think they have a huge hole at right guard, though, that needs to be addressed.
Well, they don't have anybody there.
Yeah, I mean, they have you at right guard right now.
But again, it can be addressed later. To go back to Fields for 1 second, just because the Bears didn't draft a receiver at number 39 or number 48 does not mean they don't believe in Justin Fields and they're throwing away this season. Ryan Poles literally said last night that he watched film of draft prospects with Justin Fields.
Yes. I'm glad you brought that up.
You know who was on that list? Velus Jones Jr. Fields had questions. Poles has answers. They're working with him.
That says a lot, actually, that the GM was sitting there watching film with him. Because, honestly, we talked to Fields just a couple weeks ago, and he was like, he kind of said that they hadn't talked a whole lot at that point. That he was still trying to get to know him and earn that trust back and forth. That's two ways. So to hear from the GM last night that part of the pre-draft process was sitting down and watching prospects with the quarterback, they believe in the quarterback still.
Ryan Poles also had another quote last night when he was asked about what he thought when the Giants' second pick came up in the first round, which was the Bears' original selection, but Ryan Pace traded it last year for Justin Fields. And Ryan Poles actually gave a very Ryan Pace post-trade for Khalil Mack-like answer, where he goes, when I look at that pick, when I look at our draft this year, I see Justin Fields in the first, I see Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker in the second. That's our draft. Those are our first two rounds. Fields in the first. Now, that's like Pace said a few years ago about having Mack in the first. But again, it's a sign of the belief that Ryan Poles holds in Justin Fields. And he's a younger player, for speaking of age again, than Mack was.
Yeah. Well, how about on the flip side, Khalil Mack turned into Jaquan Brisker. But when you factor in the money and how much cap space it's going to give you next year, I'd still do it.
What, trade Khalil Mack?
Let's just say, yeah.
Yes.
Because Khalil Mack turned into Jaquan Brisker. There's no, I mean, all due respect to Jaquan Brisker, we just spent this whole podcast talking about how great he is. There's a very small chance he's going to be ever as good as Khalil Mack as a defensive player in the league. If that happens, congrats to him. But
I think there's always going to be that lingering debate whether or not the Bears could have gotten more for Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
Now there's some sunk cost arguments there because you're not getting a first round pick for him. It's just different value as time changes. But
and the cap space you're freeing up as part of the trade.
Yes, there's a record amount of dead money in the Bears books right now. Something to consider for next year, especially when free agency is back on the table for the Bears. But it is what it is. A lot of holes on this team. I woke up this morning liking the Bears draft, and I have not always had that feeling.
No. I'm a big fan of when you draft guys that are going to play early. Maybe I'm just a high floor guy, the Bears need guys that are still going to be around in 4 years. Not projects that you're just hoping work out. There's just too many needs right now. And I think that they got that last night. I don't know that Kyler Gordon's going to be a Hall of Famer. Jaquan Brisker, I think best case scenario, Velus Jones Jr. is kind of your Tariq Cohen over the next few years. But again, Tariq Cohen was doing enough to earn a second contract. It's too bad what happened to him, but he was a good player on your roster that helped you. That's what you need. Players that help you, right? Players that are helping you, not hurting you. And I think the Bears got 3 of them last night, to be honest with you. And like you said, we can't always say that the day after draft. And to not have a first-round pick and to still be able to say that is impressive.
There's value in defense, too.
Yes, we do know that in Chicago.
I get today's modern NFL is build around a quarterback, but teams still make significant investments on the defensive side of the ball. Look what the Rams have done. Mm-hmm. I mean, did they just sign Bobby Wagner in the offseason, from trading for Jalen Ramsey? The investment on defense is still significant, still important.
All right, let's end the podcast with this. We purposely did not want to talk about too much about what could happen here on Saturday because there's a good chance a lot of people will listen to this podcast later. So this was kind of our round 2 and 3 recap episode. So it's still, got a life beyond the fact that the third day of the NFL draft starts in about 25 minutes as we're recording this right now. But quickly at the end, I think we can do a couple predictions that we can at least go back on and realize we sound like idiots on. So right now the Bears have 2 5th-round picks, pick number 148, pick number 150. So those are, bam, bam, right next to each other. Then they pick again in round 6 at 186. Those are the 3 picks they have available as we're recording right now as day 3 gets underway. No 4th-round pick. Do they draft more than 3 players today, Adam Johns?
Yes, that was going to be my prediction.
Okay.
That those who want that trade back will get it with the 148th or 150th. They're just too close. So I imagine that tier or cloud of players that Ryan Poles is looking at will spur some movement, and he'll take what's offered to him as someone tries to move up.
Probably only going to get you like a 7th-round pick, tops, but
maybe a late 6th.
I think they'll end up with 4 players today would be my prediction. Do they draft another wide receiver today?
No.
Okay.
Here's this. I watched them draft the running back.
Yeah.
What Ryan Poles said the other day about this being a uniquely deep draft for running back has stuck with me. I almost wonder if they'll try to find another weapon, versatile weapon who could do different things for them all over the field at running back.
Is that redundant at all with Velus Jones Jr.?
No. Get playmakers. Get playmakers.
Someone wants to know, will they draft punt god?
Kevin Fishbane would love that.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. I think he goes here in the 4th round. I don't think they have a chance to draft punt god. How many offensive linemen do they pick today?
2.
So you're
2 running backs, two offensive linemen,
a running back,
and then a safety.
A safety.
No, some defensive player. They need.
I'll say a D lineman then.
Yeah,
D lineman then. To go with that. Okay. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I'm with you with the 4 picks, 2 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman, and a running back.
All right. If you hit on all 4 of those, you have to take a shot of Malort later.
No.
No.
No deal.
That was me last night for sure. I kind of felt bad because I'm like, I'm not being a team player here. I'm refusing the Malort, but within about
Screw you guys,
seconds,
I'm going home.
Yeah. Within 30 seconds, I was like, I'm pretty sure I won that battle.
Yeah.
There's actually a great video that our social media team put up on Will DeWitt's face right after he took the shot. I think it's on the CHGO Bears Twitter account. It's hilarious. Like his face just immediately went like, and he's trying to shake it off though. He's trying to like
man up a bit. Oh. You lived in Chicago. You're born and raised Lincoln Park. It's not part of our culture here.
No, get out of here with that. Like it's technically a Chicago thing, but it's gross. Ugh. All right. Enjoy day 3 of the draft, everybody. It's another beautiful day in Chicago.
More rain, but the Bears got 2 day 1 starters on defense, everybody.
Did you see my tweet yesterday about the sun?
No.
I caused a panic.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of things happened. People thought I was high. People thought I was seeing aliens. The WGN weather department freaked out because they thought something weird was actually happening. And meanwhile, I was just talking shit about Chicago weather.
With all due respect to that producer, like, what are you thinking? Like Adam Hoge saw space.
A lot of people thought that I was seeing aliens or something. Yeah. I was just trying to make a point that the sun came out. It's a rare occurrence here in Chicago.
Cloudy and rainy for weeks.
All right. It's a fun weekend. It's been a grind. I appreciate everybody who's been watching, listening along the way.
I like this from 8 Hour Vibes. Notorious UFO conspiracy theorist Adam Hoge. I like that.
That's me. This describes me to a T.
You could get the Hoge Jahns hat from obvious shirts that he's wearing with tinfoil inside if you need be.
I don't know. Tinfoil sold separately, I believe.
Sold separately.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're out of here. We'll be back. We'll have a Monday episode for you actually to recap the entire weekend once we see how today plays out. But it's been a fun couple days. Today should be fun as well. And, it's probably just a good day to sit inside and enjoy the draft.
Sounds like a plan.
So, all right, follow us on Twitter at Adam Hoge, at Adam Johns. Read all of Johnsy's coverage on The Athletic. theathletic.com/HoganJohns is where you go to get that subscription. Our coverage is up at allchgo.com. We'll have a Bears Things column up Monday with a ton of reaction from the draft and the weekend, so check that out. And all the merch is up, obviousshirts.com. Shout out to our producer, Kent, who's been doing he's in Vegas producing the Athletics NFL show and still making time for us too. So a lot of work going on in Vegas. I'm jealous though he's there.
95 and sunny, he said.
I'd be sitting by the pool doing a Hoge Jahns episode. That
probably is.
Yeah, probably is. All right. We'll talk to you guys Monday. Enjoy the rest of the draft.
See ya.